The glittering chandeliers of the sterling gala cast long, cruel shadows. For Sophia Thorne, they felt like prison bars. She was a ghost in a $10,000 dress, completely invisible to the titans of industry and social royalty who clinked baccarat crystal glasses around her. Her husband, Marcus, the man who was supposed to be her partner, hadn't looked at her in an hour. He was too busy laughing with the very people who looked right through her. But the night was far from over, and the same doors Sophia was ignored at would soon swing open again, this time with an escort that would bring this entire glittering, heartless room to its knees. The invitation had been thick, cream-colored cardstock, smelling faintly of expensive ink and expectation. It was embossed with the gold crest of the Sterling Foundation, and its arrival had sent Marcus Thorne into a state of near euphoria for a week. "This is it, Sophia," he'd said, smoothing his already immaculate Savile Row tie. "This isn't just a party. This is the room, the only room that matters in London tonight." Sophia Thorne, nay. Alistair had simply nodded. She was tracing the complex lineage of a 14th century aqueduct on her laptop, her mind 1,000 miles away in the dusty archives of the past. "That's wonderful, dear. Wonderful," Marcus had scoffed, snatching the invitation from her desk. "Sophia Lord Ashworth will be there, the Vandermeer family, half the board of Barclays. This is the night we solidify the new fund." He looked at her, and for a fleeting moment his excitement was replaced by a familiar, weary calculation. "Please just try. Tonight. Try to look the part." "The part?" Sophia asked, her voice quiet. "You know." He waved vaguely. "Engaged, impressive. Don't just stand in the corner talking about dusty books. Wear the blue Chanel, not the grey thing you love." Now standing in that very room, the cavernous, echoing main hall of the Victoria and Albert Museum, rented out for this one exclusive night. Sophia felt the weight of that blue Chanel. It felt like a costume, a beautiful, suffocating lie. The party was a predator. It was a churning sea of old money and ruthless ambition, disguised by couture gowns and the polite orchestral swell of a string quartet. Men with reputations as sharp as razors discussed billion-pound mergers, while women with diamonds like ice chips appraised each other with carnivorous smiles. Marcus had abandoned her at the door. He was kissed on both cheeks by the hostess, Lady Genevieve Sterling, a woman whose skeletal frame was draped in emerald green Dior. Lady Sterling's eyes, bright and assessing, had flicked to Sophia. She didn't offer a hand. She didn't offer a name. She simply gave a tight, dismissive nod, as if acknowledging a piece of furniture, before turning her full, dazzling attention back to Marcus. "Marcus, darling, you look devastating. We must talk about the Hong Kong expansion." And just like that, he was gone, swallowed by a circle of laughing, champagne-sipping people who all possessed the same easy, brutal confidence. Sophia stood alone for what felt like an eternity. She was a small, quiet island in the middle of a raging social ocean. She tried to catch a waiter's eye for a simple glass of water, but they seemed to have been trained to see only the people who mattered. Their trays of champagne flutes and intricate canapes, tuna tartare on squid ink crackers, figs stuffed with truffle-infused goat cheese, floated past her as if she were a hologram. She clutched her small beaded clutch and tried to look fascinated by a nearby Rodin sculpture, but she could feel the glances. They weren't direct. They were side eyes, quick up-and-down assessments that dismissed her in a single cold instant. She was not one of them. She didn't have the right laugh, the right posture, the right air of inherited effortless superiority. Marcus was a chameleon. He came from a solid upper-middle-class background, but he had mastered the accent, the mannerisms, the entire performance of the global elite. He was a partner at a private equity firm in Mayfair, Thorne and Associates, and he was brilliant. But his brilliance was secondary to his hunger. He wanted this. He wanted to be in this room, not just as a guest, but as a pillar. And Sophia, his quiet academic wife of 6 years, she was becoming increasingly aware a liability. She was the one hobby he couldn't explain to his new friends. "I believe you're in my light." Sophia flinched and turned. A woman with platinum blonde hair, swept into a severe chignon, was looking at her, not at her, but at the sculpture she was standing in front of. This was Beatrice van der Meer, an heiress to a Dutch shipping fortune, infamous in the pages of Tatler for her scathing wit and social ruthlessness. "Oh, I'm sorry," Sophia stammered, stepping aside. Beatrice didn't acknowledge the apology. She was posing for an invisible camera, angling her body to show off the waterfall of Cartier rubies at her throat. Her friend, a younger woman with a bored expression, giggled. "Beatrice, you're terrible," the friend whispered, loud enough to be heard. "I just detest clutter," Beatrice replied, her voice like cracking ice. "This gala is meant to be for the A-list, not their administrative staff." The insult was so precise, so surgically cruel, that Sophia had no defense. She felt a hot flush of shame creep up her neck. She looked desperately for Marcus. He was 20 feet away, his back to her, roaring with laughter at a joke Lord Ashworth had just made. He was in his element. He hadn't even noticed she was gone. Sophia turned her simple Chanel dress, feeling like sackcloth, and walked away from the glittering crowd, melting into the shadows by the cloisters, her invisibility now a painful physical cloak. In the shadowed alcove, Sophia took a deep, steadying breath, fighting the childish, ridiculous urge to cry. It was just a party. It was just a group of shallow, unhappy people. It didn't matter. But it did. It mattered because the man who was supposed to be her anchor was the one who had cut the rope. She watched him. He was a masterpiece of social climbing. He moved with a practiced ease, his hand on one man's shoulder, a shared conspiratorial whisper with another. He was refilling Beatrice van der Meer's champagne. His head bent close, his laugh lines crinkling. He looked charming. He looked handsome. He looked like a complete stranger. A waiter finally passed by, and Sophia managed to flag him down. "Could I just have a glass of water, please?" The waiter, a young man with a stressed expression, paused. "Of course, madame." He glanced over her shoulder at the main crowd. "Are you with one of the guests?" The question hung in the air. "Are you one of us, or did you slip in?" "I'm with my husband," Sophia said, her voice tighter than she intended. "Marcus Thorne." The waiter's demeanor changed instantly. "Oh, Mr. Thorne. My apologies, madam. Right away." Even the staff knew the hierarchy. Marcus was a name. She was just with him. She sighed and turned to face the room again, deciding she would give it 10 more minutes. She would make one more attempt for Marcus's sake. Then she would plead a headache and take an Uber home to her quiet flat in South Kensington, back to her books and her real life. She stepped back into the light, trying to find a friendly face, or at least a neutral one. She saw a small group clustered near the bar, and summoning every ounce of courage, she walked over, intending to simply stand at the edge and listen. Beatrice Vandermeer was there holding court. So I told him if the yacht isn't at least 200 feet, it's not a yacht, it's a dinghy, and I don't do dinghies. The group, which included Marcus, laughed. Beatrice's cold eyes landed on Sophia as she approached. A small, cruel smile played on her lips. She didn't pause her story. Instead, she reached out, and as if Sophia wasn't there, tapped Marcus on the arm. "Marcus, darling," she purred loud enough for the entire circle to hear. "I must congratulate you. Your presentation at the Davos summit was apparently brilliant." "It was just a few projections, Beatrice," Marcus said, though he was clearly preening. "Don't be modest. Father said you're the sharpest tool in the shed," which, she continued, her gaze finally sliding to Sophia, "must make coming home so dull." The silence was a slap. Sophia froze. It was a direct hit, an execution in the middle of the ballroom. Marcus had a choice, a clear, distinct choice. He could defend his wife. He could draw her into the circle. He could say, "Actually, Sophia is the sharpest person I know." Or, "Sophia, you remember Beatrice." He did neither. He laughed, a short, awkward, dismissive laugh. "Beatrice, you're absolutely wicked." He then turned away from Sophia, physically blocking her from the group. "Now about that Hong Kong fund. Lord Ashworth, you were saying." The circle closed. The wall of expensive suits and silk dresses reformed, and Sophia was once again on the outside. But this was worse. This wasn't an oversight. It was an endorsement. Her husband had publicly co-signed her irrelevance. Sophia stood there for a full 30 seconds, the blood draining from her face, leaving her cold. The orchestral music seemed to swell, mocking her. She could feel the pitying, contemptuous stares of the few who had witnessed the exchange. That's his wife, poor thing. No wonder he leaves her by the sculptures. She didn't make a sound. She didn't cause a scene. She simply turned around. With a dignity that cost her everything, she walked across the vast marble floor, past the Rodin, past the towering floral arrangements, and straight towards the grand arched exit. She didn't look back. If she had, she would have seen Marcus, mid-sentence, finally notice her departure. He frowned, a flicker of annoyance crossing his face. A social foul. His wife was leaving. It was inconvenient. He excused himself from the group, not with urgency, but with the exasperated sigh of a man whose dog has just slipped its leash. He caught up to her just as she was pushing through the heavy oak doors. "Sophia, what on earth are you doing? You can't just leave." She stopped her back to him. She looked at the uniformed doorman, who was studiously ignoring them. "I'm not feeling well, Marcus." "Not feeling well, Sophia. This is the most important night of my career. Beatrice was just about to introduce me to her father. You are being incredibly selfish." She turned to face him. Her face was pale, but her eyes were not sad. They were clear. They were flames. "She humiliated me, Marcus." "What, Beatrice? That's just how she is. It's a game. You're being too sensitive. You don't understand how these people work." "No," Sophia said, her voice dangerously quiet. "I think I understand perfectly, and I understand you." "What is that supposed to mean?" he hissed, his eyes darting around to see if anyone was watching. "It means you're a coward," she said, not with anger, but with the simple finality of a diagnosis. Marcus's face darkened. "You will not speak to me like that. Not here. Not ever. You are my wife. Now get back inside, smile, and for God's sake try." "No," she said. "Sophia, I am not joking. Get back in there." He reached out and grabbed her arm. It was the first time he had ever laid a hand on her in anger. The doorman stiffened. Sophia looked down at his hand on her arm, his manicured fingers digging into the delicate Chanel fabric. Then she looked back up at his face. She didn't struggle. She didn't pull away. She just waited. "Let go of me, Marcus. Not until you agree to, ma'am." The doorman stepped forward, his face carefully neutral. "Is everything all right?" Marcus dropped his hand, as if he'd been burned, his face flushing with rage. "Everything is fine. My wife is just overwrought." "I am leaving," Sophia said, addressing the doorman. "Could you hail me a cab?" "Of course, madame." "A cab, a black cab." Marcus was apoplectic, his voice a strained whisper. "You will disgrace me. You will get in a car I call." "No, I won't," Sophia said. She stepped out into the cold, damp London air, leaving her husband standing in the doorway, sputtering in silent, humiliated fury. The November air was sharp, biting at Sophia's exposed shoulders. But it felt good. It felt real. It was a bracing slap of reality after the suffocating, perfume-choked atmosphere inside. The doorman was diligently trying to hail a cab on the busy Cromwell Road, but the street was a blur of traffic and flashing lights. Marcus was still vibrating with anger in the doorway, trapped between his need to control her and his fear of missing a crucial conversation inside. Sophia's phone, buried in her tiny clutch, buzzed. She pulled it out, expecting a furious text from Marcus. It wasn't. It was from a number she knew by heart, but one that wasn't saved in her contacts. It was an encrypted signal. "Sender AP security message car is 5 minutes out. Position compromised. Do you require extraction?" Sophia's thumb hovered over the screen. This was not part of the plan. The plan had been for her to stay in the shadows, just as she had for the last 5 years. "Reply negative. I am leaving the event. Proceed as planned. I will meet them at the rendezvous. Sender AP security, message negative, ma'am. Principal insists. The car is coming to you. ETA, 2 minutes. Sophia's blood ran cold. The principal. Here he never ever broke protocol. "Sophia." Marcus's voice was sharp. He had finally decided to follow her out his face a thundercloud. "Get in the Bentley. I'm having the driver bring it around. We are going home. Now." "I'm not going home with you, Marcus." "What did you say to me?" "I said," she repeated, turning to face him fully. "I'm not going home with you. We are married. You will do as I say. You've embarrassed me. Enough for one night." Sophia looked at him. Really looked at him. The handsome face she had fallen in love with 6 years ago was still there, but it was twisted by a kind of ugly, panicked pride. The man she'd married, the smart, funny, ambitious man, had been hollowed out and replaced by this terrified socialite. "You're embarrassed?" she asked, a genuine, sad curiosity in her voice. "You're embarrassed. Not ashamed, not apologetic, just embarrassed." "Ashamed of what?" "Ashamed that my wife can't handle a simple party. Ashamed that she takes offense to a bit of harmless ribbing. She called me your staff, Marcus, and you laughed. It was a joke, Sophia. God, you're being hysterical." A sleek black Audi A8, not a Bentley, pulled up to the curb, its tinted windows impossibly dark. It had no private hire license. It just appeared. A tall man in an immaculately tailored black suit with a small, clear earpiece stepped out of the passenger side. He didn't look at Marcus. His eyes, trained and assessing, found Sophia instantly. "Dr. Thorne," he said, his voice quiet, respectful. "We're running a bit behind schedule. My apologies for the delay." He opened the rear door. Sophia's breath caught. Dr. Thorne. No one had called her that in years, not since she'd published her dissertation. Marcus stared. "Who the hell is this? What is this? Is this some kind of joke? An Uber?" "Mr. Thorne," the security man said, his voice flat, his gaze shifting to Marcus for the first time. It was not a friendly gaze. "Please step away from the door." "I will not." "This is my wife, Sophia." "What is this?" "It's my car, Marcus." Sophia said, her voice surprisingly steady. "Your car." "We share a Bentley." "That is not our Bentley." "What did you do?" "Rent a car to what impress me, to spite me. This is pathetic." "Good night, Marcus," Sophia said. She made to step into the car. Marcus, in a final, desperate act of control, grabbed her arm again. "You are not leaving." In less than a second, the security man moved. He didn't touch Marcus. He simply interposed his own body, a solid wall of muscle between them. "Sir, I will not ask you again. Remove your hand from Dr. Thorne. Now." The menace was unspoken, but absolute. Marcus, who had built his life on bluffing, knew a superior hand when he saw one. He recoiled, his hand dropping. "Sophia." He stammered, his rage turning to confusion. "What is going on?" Sophia just looked at him, her expression unreadable. Then she slid into the plush leather-scented darkness of the Audi. The security man closed the door with a solid, definitive thud. He got back in the passenger seat, and just before the car pulled away, another vehicle, a black Range Rover, pulled up seamlessly behind it. And another. A third car, a dark blue Bentley Mulsanne, with a small discreet flag on the bonnet, pulled to a stop just in front. Marcus stood on the pavement, frozen. This wasn't a car. This was a motorcade. The doorman, who had seen everything, was now standing at rigid attention, his face pale with shock. He wasn't looking at Marcus. He was looking at the small, unmistakable flag on the lead car's bonnet. The Royal Standard. Inside the V&A, the party had reached its zenith. The champagne was flowing, the laughter was loud, and the deals were being sketched out on cocktail napkins. Lady Genevieve Sterling was feeling triumphant. The evening was a resounding success. The donations had already exceeded last year's total. Then her chief of event security, a severe-looking woman named Harris, touched her elbow. "My lady," Harris murmured, her voice tight. "We have a situation at the entrance." "A situation? What a protester." Lady Sterling's face soured. "I told you to handle security." "No, my lady. It's RPO." RPO. Royal Protection. They're here. They're securing the entrance and sweeping the main hall. Lady Sterling's blood turned to ice. "Here. For me. No one told me." Is it His Majesty? That would be a coup beyond her wildest dreams. "We don't know who the principal is, my lady. They just informed us that they are on site, and that a member of the royal family will be arriving in 90 seconds. 90 seconds! Lady Sterling nearly shrieked. She frantically scanned her own dress. "Good God! Why wasn't I informed? This is a disaster. Get the quartet to play the anthem." "No, that's too much. Just get everyone to be quiet." The word spread through the room like a virus. It started with the staff, who suddenly stood at attention, their backs rigid. Then the security teams, previously disguised as guests, materialized, speaking quietly into their cuffs. The whispers began. "What's happening? It's security. Did something happen? Look, by the door, those are the royal detail." The entire boisterous, self-important room fell silent. All eyes turned to the grand arched entrance. Marcus Thorne stumbled back, inside his face the color of ash. He looked like he had seen a ghost. "Marcus, darling." Beatrice Vandermeer glided over, her ruby necklace flashing. "You look dreadful. Did your little mouse actually leave you?" How utterly embarrassing. Marcus didn't seem to hear her. He was staring at the door, his hands shaking. A motorcade," he mumbled. "The flag." "What are you babbling about?" Beatrice said, annoyed. At that moment, Lady Genevieve Sterling, her face stretched into a terrified rictus of a smile, stepped onto the small stage, tapping the microphone. "Ladies, gentlemen," her voice was a high, trembling squeak, "if I could have your attention, we are unexpectedly and profoundly honored to be joined by a last-minute, very special guest." The great oak doors swung open. 2 uniformed Metropolitan Police officers entered first, followed by 4 men in black suits, the Royal Protection Detail. They fanned out, creating a secure human perimeter. The room held its breath. Lord Ashworth unconsciously straightened his bow tie. Beatrice Vandermeer stood on her tiptoes, her eyes wide with greedy anticipation. Was it Catherine? Or perhaps Camilla? And then he walked in. It was the Prince of Wales. A collective gasp sucked the air from the room. Prince William, heir to the throne, was here. In their room. He was dressed in a flawless, dark navy tuxedo, looking every bit the future king. The guests were paralyzed, a mixture of awe and panic. People began to curtsy and bow their heads, a clumsy, uncoordinated ripple of deference. The prince smiled a polite, practiced smile and raised a hand. "Please, please, everyone. Enjoy your evening. I'm only here to collect a colleague. A colleague." He turned back to the doorway and extended his hand. And into the room, flanked by 2 more protection officers, walked Sophia Thorne. The silence in the room was no longer just quiet. It was a vacuum. It was a thick, crushing, absolute void of sound. Sophia walked into the hall she had fled in humiliation, not 10 minutes earlier. She was no longer wearing the Chanel coat. She was just in her simple blue dress. But she was not the same woman. Her shoulders were back, her chin was high, and she was on the arm of the Prince of Wales. Marcus Thorne made a sound, a small, choked gasp. His champagne glass slipped from his fingers and shattered on the marble floor. The sound was obscenely loud in the silence. No one turned. No one looked at him. Every eye in the room, every titan of industry, every socialite, every lord and lady was fixed on Sophia. Beatrice Vandermeer's perfectly painted red lips parted. Her face, a moment ago so full of malicious glee, was now a grotesque mask of disbelief. What? No, it's not possible." Prince William escorted Sophia toward the center of the room, his hand resting possessively on the small of her back. They walked past the Rodin sculpture. They walked past the alcove where Sophia had hidden. They stopped right in front of the stage. Lady Genevieve Sterling scurried over, her face a chaotic mess of smiles and terror. She dropped into a deep, trembling curtsy. Your Royal Highness. We are... I had no idea. You are most welcome. And her eyes darted to Sophia, her brain utterly unable to process the data. Lady Sterling, the prince said, his voice calm and carrying. Thank you for hosting. I must apologize for our unconventional arrival. I was meant to be here much earlier, but my flight from Geneva was delayed, and I simply could not let the evening proceed without personally honoring your guest of honor. Lady Sterling blinked. Our guest of honor, sir. The prince smiled warmly, and he turned his full, undivided attention to Sophia. You all know the Helios Initiative, I assume. A murmur went through the crowd. Of course they did. The Helios Initiative was the most talked about, most mysterious, and most effective climate action fund on the planet. It had appeared from nowhere 5 years ago, and had since channeled over £20 billion into cutting-edge green technology desalination plants, carbon capture projects, sustainable agriculture. It was more effective than most governments. Its founder was famously, stubbornly, aggressively anonymous. They were known in the press only as the Architect. The Helios Initiative, the prince continued, has been a cornerstone of my own environmental work. The Architect has become one of my closest advisors, and if I may be so bold, one of my dearest friends. For years, this person has refused all accolades, insisting the work, not the name, was what mattered. He paused, and his smile became mischievous. But tonight, Helios has just completed its final round of funding, securing the future of the project for the next 50 years. And I decided it was high time the world knew who to thank. He turned, took Sophia's hand and raised it. Lady Sterling, ladies and gentlemen, it is my profound honor and my personal joy to finally introduce you to the founder, the chief architect, and the brilliant mind behind the Helios Initiative, Dr. Sophia Alastair Thorne. The name hit the room like a sonic boom. Dr. Sophia Alastair Thorne. Beatrice Vandermeer grabbed the arm of the woman next to her, her nails digging in. Doctor, her. Marcus Thorne was rigid. His mind was flashing back through 6 years of marriage. Sophia bent over her laptop at 3 a.m. Just research, dear. Her boring conference calls. It's just an academic panel, you'd be bored. The private locked office in their flat he was never allowed to enter. It's my sanctuary, Marcus. Please. The trips to Zurich, Nairobi, and Singapore she took alone. Just archival work. It wasn't a hobby. It wasn't dusty books. It was a multi-billion-pound global enterprise. The room, after a moment of stunned paralysis, exploded. The applause was deafening, thunderous, not polite, but desperate. People were clapping not just for her, but to cover their own shock, their own miscalculation. Photographers who had been kept outside were now suddenly allowed in their flashes, turning the room into a strobing, chaotic scene. Sophia the ghost. Sophia the invisible wife. Sophia the staff. She was the most important person in the room. She had been all along. While the room swarmed, Marcus remained a statue in a puddle of spilled champagne. The world had just tilted on its axis. The woman he had dismissed as a social liability, the woman he had just grabbed and insulted, was this. Dr. Sophia Thorne. He watched numb as Lord Ashworth, the man Marcus had been grovelling to all night, pushed his way to the front. Dr. Thorne, astonishing, simply astonishing. I sit on the board of BP. We must talk about your carbon capture tech. We'd be prepared to offer. Dr. Thorne, a baroness from a rival bank, shoved him aside. Your desalination project in Kenya. We want to fund the next phase. Sophia handled it with a grace that terrified Marcus. She wasn't flustered. She was serene. She smiled, nodded, and shook hands, directing them to a quiet, poised woman Marcus hadn't noticed before, who had entered with the royal party. This is Anya, my chief of staff. She's handling all inquiries tonight. The prince stood by her side, a guardian. He was beaming with genuine pride. And then Marcus saw her. Beatrice Vandermeer. She was trying to flee. Her face was a mask of pure, unadulterated horror. She understood perhaps better than anyone the magnitude of her social suicide. She had just insulted to her face the woman who was a personal friend of the Prince of Wales. She had called the founder of the Helios Initiative staff. A reporter from the Telegraph, smelling blood, intercepted her before she could reach the door. Ms. Vandermeer, you were seen speaking with Dr. Thorne earlier tonight. What are your impressions of her work? Beatrice's eyes were wide, panicked. She's wonderful. A true visionary. A dear friend. The lie was so transparent, so pathetic, that even the reporter looked disgusted. But Marcus's eyes were drawn back to his wife, Sophia. She was laughing at something the prince had whispered, her face alive and radiant in a way he hadn't seen since their wedding day. She looked beautiful. She looked powerful. She looked happy. He had to get to her. He had to fix this. He started pushing his way through the crowd, a desperate, clumsy salmon swimming upstream. Sophia, Sophia! He broke through the inner circle. He was standing right in front of them. Sophia. She stopped talking. The laughter died on her lips. She turned and looked at him. Her face was not angry. It was not sad. It was completely, terrifyingly blank. It was the look you give a stranger who has bothered you. The Prince of Wales, however, looked at him with an expression of pure, cold disdain. He knew. Sophia must have told him, or he had seen the exchange at the door. Sophia, Marcus panted, trying to smile. This is incredible. Why didn't you tell me, Dr. Thorne? I'm so proud. Sophia just looked at him. We should celebrate. He tried, his voice cracking. I'll have the Bentley. Mr. Thorne, the prince interrupted, his voice, quiet, but as sharp as a blade. I believe your wife is rather busy. Sir, your highness, you don't understand. She's my wife. I'm her husband. Are you? The prince asked a simple, devastating question. He then turned his back on Marcus, a social execution of breathtaking finality. Sophia, I believe the delegation from the Norwegian Sovereign Fund is waiting for us in the private salon. Shall we? Of course, your highness, Sophia said. She turned and walked away with the prince, her chief of staff, and her security detail. She didn't look back. She didn't say his name. Marcus was left alone. Again. But this time, he wasn't invisible. He was the center of attention. Every eye in the room was on him. They were not looking at him with awe or even pity. They were looking at him with utter, undisguised contempt. He was the man who had the sun in his hands and had complained that it wasn't shiny enough. He was the fool who had ignored the most important person in the world, for them. And in doing so, he had shown them all exactly what he was, a hollow, grasping, second-rate man who wouldn't recognize true power if he was married to it. Lady Genevieve Stirling, her face now a mask of cold fury at having been so badly misinformed, glided past him. "Mr. Thorne," she hissed, "I think you've overstayed your welcome." He had been dismissed. From the party, from the fund, from his entire life. The private salon was the V&A's boardroom, a space that had been quietly secured by Sophia's own team an hour before. The mood here was electric, but in a different way. There was no fawning, no social preening. It was all business. Seated around the long mahogany table were the people who actually ran the world. Not the socialites like Beatrice, but the ministers of finance, the heads of sovereign wealth funds, and the CEOs of global tech firms. "Sophia, thank God," said a man with a distinct Norwegian accent, standing as she entered. "These preliminary numbers on the tidal generators are, well, they're revolutionary." "William, good to see you," Sophia said, nodding to the prince the formality of "Your Highness," gone now that they were in private. "I'm sorry I had to do that," he said, accepting a glass of water from Anya. "But my security team intercepted a feed from the door. They saw your husband assault you." His face was grim. "I couldn't let that stand, and frankly it was time." "I know," Sophia said, taking a seat at the head of the table. "He made it easy." "Your husband," Anya, her sharp chief of staff, said with distaste, "is currently being removed from the premises by Lady Stirling's security. He's also been suspended from the Thorne and Associates board, pending an emergency ethics review as of 5 minutes ago." The board members who were at the gala held an impromptu vote in the men's room. Sophia absorbed this. She felt nothing. Not relief, not anger. Just a quiet, clean emptiness where her marriage used to be. "Right," Sophia said, all business. "Let's talk about Phase 4. Anya, pull up the thermal imaging data from the Arctic Circle. Eric, I want to talk to you about the seed fund for the new agricultural tech. William, I need you to lean on the Brazilian government. Their new policies are threatening the entire Amazon initiative." For the next 2 hours, Sophia was in her true element. She was not a wife. She was not a ghost. She was a general. She moved with a speed and precision that left the room breathless. She quoted staggering financial figures from memory, debated complex engineering principles, and navigated delicate geopolitical tensions with the skill of a seasoned diplomat. This was Dr. Sophia Thorne. The Prince of Wales watched her not as a royal but as a student. She was, he had often thought, one of the most brilliant human beings he had ever met. He had first encountered her work through a white paper she had anonymously submitted to his own environmental prize. It was so revolutionary that his team thought it was a hoax. He had sought her out, finding a quiet, unassuming academic in a small London flat. He had become the patron and public face of her fund, using his status to open doors, while she, the architect, built the entire machine in secret. She had insisted on anonymity, terrified that the shallow worship of personality would corrupt the purity of the work, and perhaps terrified of what it would do to her life with Marcus, a man she still on some level loved, or at least loved the memory of. Tonight, that was over. Finally, the meeting wound down. Deals were struck. Papers were signed. The world had, in a small but tangible way, been saved a little more. "A triumph, Sophia. As always," the Norwegian minister said, shaking her hand. As the room cleared, only Sophia and the prince remained. "You're staying at the Savoy tonight, yes?" he asked gently. "Anya has your suite ready." "Yes. Thank you, William." For everything. You did this, Sophia, not me. I just held the door. He paused, his expression serious. Are you all right with him? Sophia looked out the boardroom window down at the gala she had left behind. The party was breaking up. The guests were spilling out their faces animated, all talking about one thing. About her. I was invisible for 6 years, Sophia said, her voice soft. I told myself it was for the work, but it was also for him. I thought if I made myself small enough, he would finally see me. I thought if I didn't overshadow him, he would feel secure enough to love me. She shook her head, a small, sad smile. What a fool I was. You can't love a shadow. He didn't deserve you, Sophia, William said quietly. No, she agreed. He didn't. But the worst part is I let him think I didn't deserve him. She stood up, smoothing her dress. That ends tonight. Her security detail stepped forward. Dr. Thorne, the car is ready. She walked out of the V&A, not through the main entrance, but through a private exit, her team surrounding her. She stepped into the Royal Bentley, and as it pulled away, she didn't even glance at the curb where a lone, pathetic figure stood in the rain, trying to hail a cab. Sophia awoke in a bed that felt like a cloud. The sheets of thread count so high they felt like water. Sun was streaming through the vast windows of the royal suite at the Savoy, illuminating the Thames below. Her phone, a new secure one Anya had provided, was on the nightstand. The old one, the one with Marcus's texts, was probably at the bottom of a river by now. She sat up, and Anya entered with a pot of coffee. Good morning, Doctor. Anya, you can call me Sophia when we're not in meetings. Respectfully, Doctor, I don't think that's possible anymore, Anya said, a rare, wide smile on her face. You should see this. She handed Sophia an iPad. It was every major news site. The Times, The Telegraph, Forbes, The Wall Street Journal, The New York Times. She was the lead story. Forbes, the ghost of Helios. How Dr. Sophia Thorne anonymously built a $20 billion green empire. The Times, the architect unmasked Prince William, reveals quiet academic as global climate savior. The stories featured pictures from last night. Sophia poised and radiant next to the prince. Sophia commanding the room. And then the other pictures. A grainy, long-lens shot of Marcus grabbing her arm at the door. A photo of Marcus, his face a mask of slack-jawed shock. A final devastating picture of Marcus alone on the curb, his suit soaked, looking utterly defeated. The narrative was brutal and clear. The social media world had already convicted him. He was the man who ignored the sun. What about Beatrice? Sophia asked, her voice small. Anya's smile became a grin. Oh, that's the best part. The Daily Mail has a 5-page spread. The socialite suicide. Beatrice van der Meer calls billionaire architect staff. Her father's company has lost 12% on the stock market this morning. He's released a statement publicly disavowing her, and she's apparently on a plane to a wellness retreat in Switzerland with no return date. Sophia read the articles, a strange, cold vindication washing over her. It wasn't triumph, it was justice. And Marcus, his firm Thorne and Associates, officially terminated his contract an hour ago. Gross ethical misconduct, and bringing the firm into disrepute. It seems his entire stable of clients was built on the idea of his connections. The moment the truly connected people, namely the Prince of Wales, publicly cut him, his value evaporated. The other partners are buying him out for pennies on the pound. He was ruined. He had chased the glittering, shallow world of the elite, and that same world had turned and devoured him the second he became inconvenient. Sophia sipped her coffee. It was the best coffee she had ever tasted. The hotel phone rang. Anya answered it, listened, and then covered the receiver. "It's a Mr. Marcus Thorne. He's in the lobby. He's begging to see you." Sophia looked out the window at the river. She watched a small boat cut through the water, leaving a clean white wake. "No," she said. Tell him Dr. Thorne is unavailable. She's in a meeting, and she will be for the rest of her life." Anya relayed the message and hung up. Sophia stood, walked to the mirror, and looked at herself. She saw the academic, the wife, the ghost. And then they all faded, leaving just her. Sophia. The architect. She was finally visible. 6 months had passed since the night of the Sterling Gala. The name Sophia Thorne was now uttered in the same hallowed, hushed tones as Musk or Gates, but with a different, more profound reverence. She wasn't just seen as a disruptor, she was seen as a restorer. The cover of Time magazine hadn't just featured her face. It had been a striking minimalist portrait titled simply The Architect. The Helios Foundation had moved from the collection of scattered secret offices Sophia had run from her flat and a dozen anonymous server rooms. Its new headquarters was a marvel of sustainable architecture, a living building on the bank of the Thames that seemed to have grown organically from the earth. It was constructed of reclaimed timber, self-healing concrete, and glass that micro-adjusted to the sun's angle. It was powered entirely by its own tidal generators, and the central atrium where today's event was being held felt less like a corporate lobby and more like a Californian redwood forest. This was Sophia's room, not a borrowed glittering cage like the V&A, but a space she had designed and built from the ground up. Here the air smelled of damp earth, new ideas, and fresh coffee. The only currency was intellect, and the only social hierarchy was based on the boldness of one's solutions. The divorce had been finalized in record time. Marcus, stripped of his partnership, and his reputation, had hired a famously aggressive legal team to try and claim half of the Helios Initiative's assets. The judge, a stern, no-nonsense woman named Justice Alistair. No relation, a fact that had caused Marcus to pale, had reviewed the case for less than an hour. She had ruled that the initiative, a charitable trust established long before the marriage had irretrievably broken down, was not a marital asset. She had almost laughed him out of court. Marcus was left with half the proceeds from the South Kensington flat, and a name so toxic he couldn't get a lunch meeting at a pret-a-manger. Anya, now the official COO of Helios, and Sophia's ever-present right hand, had given her the final update that morning. "Mr. Thorne," Anya had said, reading from her tablet with a clinical lack of emotion, "is now a junior associate at his father's small accounting firm in Sussex. He's renting a room above the Gilded Lion pub. His 47 emails from last night have been filtered per protocol." "And Beatrice Vandermeer?" Sophia had asked, not out of malice, but for a sense of complete closure. "Ah," Anya said, a rare, cold smile touching her lips. Still on her indefinite wellness retreat in Gstad. Her father, furious at the hit his stock took, has publicly cut her off until she learns some humility. We've received reports she's been quietly selling her jewelry, including that Cartier ruby necklace to pay her hotel bills. The predators of the social jungle had turned on their own. But Sophia's mind was not on the past. It was on the present, Today the vast, sun-drenched atrium was filled not with cynical billionaires and preening socialites, but with over 200 of the brightest young minds in Europe. They were engineers, biologists, physicists, and computer scientists. Today was the inauguration of the Alistair Grant for Women in Science, a £10 million annual fund Sophia had established in honor of her mother. Sophia stood on the simple, reclaimed wood podium. She wasn't in Chanel. She wore a sharp, dark green suit, her hair pulled back in a practical, elegant knot. She was not nervous. She was home. For too long, she said, her voice clear and carrying, resonating with a natural authority, the brightest ideas have been left in the shadows. For too long, the people with the real solutions, the real power, have been told to be quiet, to wait their turn to stand in the corner. The room was utterly silent, hanging on her every word. She saw young women in lab coats, in jeans, in hijabs, all looking at her with a fierce, brilliant, tangible hope. This was a different kind of power. It wasn't the power to exclude, it was the power to ignite. They've been told they don't look the part, she continued, a subtle, sharp edge to her voice. They've been told their work is dull. They've been treated like administrative staff at a party they rightfully own. The Alistair Grant is not a gift. It is an accelerant. It is a key. We are not just opening the door for you. We are handing you the blueprints and the funding to build an entirely new house. The applause was a thunderous, genuine, joyful roar. It went on for a full minute. As she stepped down, a familiar figure moved through the crowd to greet her, his security detail melting discreetly into the background. Sophia, Prince William said, kissing her on both cheeks, a gesture of true, uncomplicated friendship. That was magnificent. You're a natural at this. I'm learning, William. She smiled. It's different. Speaking to a room where you aren't invisible. Invisible. He laughed, a warm, genuine sound. My dear, I think you're the only person anyone sees anymore. The initiative's carbon capture project. You've done more in 6 months than my family has in 60 years. We're a team, she countered, a callback to their first meeting in the V&A boardroom. A very good one, he agreed. He was pulled away by the Minister for Energy, and at the same moment, a young woman no older than 20 stepped forward, clutching a tablet as if it were a life raft. Her eyes were wide, shining with unshed tears. Dr. Thorne, I'm Amara Hussein. I'm the first recipient. The grant for my work in microbial desalination. Sophia's entire focus snapped to the young woman, her expression shifting from social grace to laser-like intensity. Amara? Yes, of course. I read your paper. It's revolutionary. You read it. Amara was floored, her voice a squeak. Twice, Sophia said. Your methodology for stabilizing the enzyme cascade. It's the missing link for our project in the Horn of Africa. My team was stuck on it. I was stuck on it. I wanted to say thank you. Amara stammered, her composure breaking. I've been working on this in my university's basement. My professors told me it was too ambitious. They told me to focus on my graded work. You have no idea what this means. You've changed my life. Sophia looked at this brilliant, intense, overwhelmed young woman and saw a perfect, painful reflection of her old self, brilliant, hungry, and just on the edge of being silenced by a world that valued decorum over discovery. She put a hand on Amara's shoulder, her grip firm and grounding. No, Amara, Sophia said, her voice quiet, but ringing with absolute conviction. You are going to change the world. I'm just here to make sure no one ever stands in your light. Sophia watched her walk away, not to a corner, but to the center of the atrium, where the head of her R&D department and 2 senior engineers were already waiting, eager to talk to her. Sophia smiled, a real bone-deep smile of profound satisfaction. She was no longer a +1. She was no longer an accessory, a shadow, or a social liability. She was the architect of her own life, and she was drawing the blueprints for a new world, one where brilliance was the only invitation required. And so Sophia Thorne's story isn't just about revenge. It's about revelation. It shows us that true worth isn't in the recognition we get from others, but in the work we do in silence. It's a reminder that the people who ignore you, the ones who try to make you feel small, are often the ones who are terrified of your light. Sophia's husband and the party guests thought she was a ghost, but she was the one with all the power. They were the ones who were truly invisible. What did you think of Sophia's incredible transformation? Have you ever been in a situation where you were completely underestimated, only to prove everyone wrong? Share your own stories in the comments below. And if you loved this story of justice and vindication, please hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs to hear it, and be sure to subscribe for more real-life drama every week. Every